to show that, and I'm really awful at this. I don't do tutorials very well, so I apologize in advance. But I'm going to try and show you guys how I built Princess. Just FYI, you're going to get hurt if you try to build this. You're going to hurt yourself building it or wearing it. If you're stupid like me, and if you have no regard for your personal safety like me, then I still don't recommend doing it. But if you want to know how I built it anyway, here's how I did it. First thing is research. Look at dinosaur bones, look at birds, look at reptiles. Do some looking around. Find some anatomical studies if you can. And then do a mock-up, do a sketch, work out what you're trying to get. I ended up designing colors based off of a pheasant, and then I had something to shoot for. The first thing I did was I laid out a whole bunch of newsprint and had someone trace my outline, my profile silhouette. And then I drew the T-Rex around that, so I knew what I was getting into. Then I started on the head. The head, I basically drew a skull and traced that with Sharpie onto some plastic mesh. And then I cut that out, sewed it, sewed the various pieces together with wire, sort of crummy jeweler's wire. I'm afraid I don't have the pattern to share with you. I'm sorry. I didn't expect to do this. And then I started building it up with foam. It doesn't matter if it looks pretty or not, just use scraps. You're just doing the first bits of building up. After that, I made the eyes and attached those. The eyes are just little plastic hemispheres from ornaments that you can buy at like Hobby Lobby. They're craft ornaments. And then I drew the eyes digitally. You can paint them, marker them, whatever. The supports for the eyes are Crayola Model Magic, and that's used for other things too, so we'll get back to that later. But anywho, after that, I got to start working on the rest of the head, which I did by first putting a layer of cloth on just to fill in some of the gaps. And then I did more detailed foaming, like adding the eyebrow ridges and adding more of the sort of shape of the nose. And then I added cloth, and you can see a bunch of that here, but I'll get back to that later. Right now I want to talk about body construction. The body is mainly supported by PVC piping. Here you can see two broad pipes that go over my shoulders. Those basically will support it. I made a sort of rectangular piece that acted sort of like a backpack. And onto that, they're attached another rod, which was going to support the tail, but it didn't end up working that way. I'll explain later. The body, the main shape of the body, is made out of animal wire. It's sharp. Please be careful if you work with this stuff. I don't have a pattern for making the shape of the body, sorry. But basically, make a cone and bang it around until you get the shape you want. Then I zip tied it to the two supporting pieces of PVC pipe. The neck is made out of foam core and cardboard. I later made handles out of duct tape and cardboard. So I don't have pictures, but there you go. Now, as for the legs are made primarily out of foam that I got for a super sale at like Joann Fabrics. But if you can't afford that, if you have friends who have like foam couches they don't want, Scavenging is great. So are sales. However, building the muscles would have been too expensive, so I cheated. I used polyfill and sort of kneaded it until I got the right muscle shape that I wanted. And then I used duct tape to build a net and attach it to the legs, just sort of laying it over the polyfill really carefully. And then I filled the net up. I kept adding layers until I got this sort of silver, Terminator-looking leg. And then I got to cover the body with cloth. The majority of what you see is a rayon spandex blend, which I got for super sale and or free. It's expensive, as it turns out. There's a crushed velvet that's almost the same thing if you use the wrong side out. Go to Joann Fabrics, look around, see what's on sale. Now, when it comes to adding cloth to the legs, if you just lay it over the duct tape, it's going to look awful. So what I ended up doing is I ended up basically going across it, and I would glue a bit of this fabric, and then I would lay down bits of more polyfill? Good Lord, polyfill, onto the duct tape to smooth it out, and then I'd wrap the cloth around and glue along the crease where the muscles met, and then I do the same thing over and over again. I did this for the legs, the tail, the whole shenanigan. Now, that being said, when you're doing this, it's really, really important that you don't use an opaque cloth like this on the belly. The belly is where you're going to see from, or at least where I see from. If you work something else out, power to you. For that, I used this sort of mesh stuff that you can get in the cross-stitch aisle. I don't cross-stitch, so I don't know what it's used for, but that's okay. It works for making dinosaurs. Just make sure there's a decent amount of it. I use, I think, maybe a third of the body, as it were, to just be someplace to look out of. And now the fun part, which is scales and color. The scales for Princess are a mixture of texturing from acrylic paint, particularly on the face, Crayola Model Magic, and dollops of hot glue. I used hot glue to hold basically the whole thing together. The cloth that's applied is not sewn, most of it. Most of it is hot glued, which is really weird for me. But I applied the scales with hot glue. I did little drops of hot glue, to make tiny scales. But Crayola Model Magic is your friend when it comes to building these scales, because they're lightweight and sometimes cheap. Depends on when you get it. But anywho, you go ahead and you make a bunch of scales of a whole bunch of different sizes and shapes. You apply them to your dinosaur or dragon or whatever you're building, and then you get to have fun. You get to spray paint it. Now, cloth will dull spray paint colors, but Model Magic and glue will be vivid. So get yourself a range of spray paints, gloss, matte, whatever, have at. Just remember, if you've got the eyeballs in, you need to mask it off with masking tape. You can paint with acrylic later. After that, I applied the fur, and basically that's it. A couple of things to note. There is no zipper to get in. Basically, I get in through a really embarrassing... I basically go in through the legs in between them, which is really awkward. But basically I have slits in the legs, and those Velcro up. When you're in this, or at least the way I built it, your head is going to be down and your shoulders are going to be carrying the dinosaur. You're not going to be able to see well. You're not going to be able to hear all that great. We had a walkie-talkie dealie with my handler, as it were. But basically, that's it. I had to remove the tail rod so I could get her on the stage. But if you have a lot of room to play in, put a tail rod in it, like I've got in that earlier image. By all means, make it as realistic as possible. I did it this way because it's what I had access to and what was cheap. If you have, a molding facility, or whatever, please make use of all and everything. This is not the only way to build this. Do different things. But this is the best I could do in the time I had available, and it didn't turn out too horrible. So I wish you guys luck with your costuming. Have fun, be safe, and be careful, because dinosaurs are wild animals and they will act how shall we say it, wild. You guys take care. Have a wild night.